Hey everyone, as you're entering the room, I'm Greg Nettle. I serve as president of Stadia, and we just wanted to open the webinar doors a few minutes early so people can come in and get settled. As you're coming in, just kind of want to give you a couple housekeeping items. The Q&A button at the bottom of your screen will be open, and that's where we really need you to ask your questions, is on the Q&A tab. We also have the chat feature open, and that's really to converse amidst yourselves. We need the questions in the Q&A, and the chat is really just to let us all connect relationally and enjoy one another's company during this time. Welcome from Avado, Colorado, and Jesse from One City Church in Denver. Great to have you on the webinar. Hey, Doug. Canton is sunny today and about 50 degrees, so we're in an upswing here. Everyone, as you're coming on in, I'm Greg Nettle, and I serve as president of Stadia. It's great to have you all with us on this webinar, and we'll look forward to chatting together in just a few minutes as people join us. Love seeing all of you and where you're from. Please feel free to use the chat and let us know who you are and where you're at. All over the place: Arizona, Missouri, Georgia, Indiana, another Missouri.
Yeah, I'm seeing some Joplin people.
How about that, man?
My hometown.
Is it really, Aaron? I didn't know that you were from Joplin.
Yeah, grew up there.
The metropolis.
Yes.
What church were you part of, Aaron?
College Heights.
You were? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
I just preached
out there. I preached out there this spring. Not at College Heights, yeah. Another church plant in Joplin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, fun. my wife and I graduated from the school, and that church ordained me.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Wow. Okay, everyone. Well, everyone's jumping on. We're going to wait about 2 more minutes before we get started, but I'm Greg Nettle, and I serve as president of Stadia. It's so good to have you with us. Please use the Q&A button to ask any questions you might have, and then use the chat feature to just let us know where you're from and to talk with one another. If you want to, say how good looking Aaron Brockett is and how ugly Ben is, you can do that as well. That's fine. Or how athletic Ben is, because he works out all the time, plays tennis and all kinds of things. These are 2 of my good friends, and I'm really excited to have them with me today. Hey, we're just going to set this up kind of just like a living room chat, because that's how I'd talk to these guys normally. We'd just be sitting out together and, having a lot of fun and chatting in the evening, afternoon chat today. And that's how we're going to kind of proceed. We're in incredibly opportunistic times right now, but also times that have challenges. And we're going to be talking in this webinar about how to keep the church on mission during these times of challenge. Now, it's difficult enough during normalcy in normal times to keep the church on mission and moving forward. But even now, it creates even more challenges, but I believe also more opportunities. We have Aaron Brockett with us today. He's the senior leader of Traders Point Church in Indianapolis area. And also my friend Ben Kacharis, who's the senior leader of Mountain Christian up in the Baltimore area. Hey, Aaron, if you don't mind, just give us tell us a little bit about yourself, your church, how long you've been at Traders Point, and a little bit about your family. I know you have kids.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Aaron Brockett, and the lead pastor at Traders Point Church in Indianapolis. Have been here about 12 and a half years in this role, and Traders Point's got 6 campuses across Indianapolis. My wife and I, Lindsay, will be married 21 years this summer. We have 4 kids. 3 of them are teenagers in the house, and an 8-year-old.
How's the stress level in the house with 3 teenagers, Aaron?
Not bad. They're good kids. I think that my 15-year-old daughter, she's kind of a homebody, so she's actually really loving this. And my 13-year-old, she is doing okay, Zooming her friends and all of that. So, and the 8-year-old's oblivious. She really has no idea what's going on right now, and I really am envious of her perspective. My son's probably having the hardest time with it, just because he's so used to just jumping in the car and going and hanging out with his friends whenever he wanted to. So it's just trying to make sure that we stop long enough to try to help them process when, as we know, like teenagers, at least this is true of my teenagers, they're not even fully aware how to get in touch with their feelings and emotions and process them. So and I'm not very good at that myself. So my wife's great at it, but trying to help them do what I'm even trying to do has been a learning curve over the last several weeks here, but good.
Yeah, and I think that's something we can talk about together today, is just this idea of how do we help people with what they're feeling, right? Because we're all feeling a level of angst. I was talking to our staff, Stadi's 100% virtual, our staff. And I was just in a Zoom meeting that we have with staff, and talking about, when our Ohio governor announced and when President Trump announced the next 30 days, we're going to be social distancing. It went from something for me that was kind of like, okay, this might be for just a time, to, oh my gosh, this is real and this is going to last a long time. And it was a whole new set kind of feelings that I had to start dealing with. Ben, tell us a little bit about your church ministry, your family.
Yep. Hey, everyone. This feels like a really good thing to do. Everyone's a little bit hungry for just, can we talk to some other people who can talk shop with ministry? And I'm sure we've all been doing that. Text chains blowing up, but this is really great to be able to hang out. So I'm glad to be here. My name is Ben, as Greg said. I'm from Minnesota originally, but I've lived in Maryland with Mountain Christian Church for the last 23 years. It's been a great run of ministry for us. We're a multi-site church that, like a lot of you, have been, playing around with digital stuff. And all of a sudden, we got real innovative about 2 weeks ago and figured a lot of stuff out. So we were getting ready to launch our 5th campus this fall. So that's an interesting dynamic with this, is we have a building under construction right now that's being kind of finished and furbished as we speak. And we just called the construction off on that, but we were pretty far along. We were hoping for the best there. I have 3 kids, and our oldest just got married last summer. He's down at Emmanuel with his bride, whose birthday they're celebrating today by themselves, so with video friends. And I have 2 other adultish kids, 21 and 23, who are at home with us right now. In the stage of life, with college studies and so forth, that we're all here under one roof right now. So I'm actually really glad they're here. We have, in the ministry here, my wife is also on our staff, so she's working her buns off. She's on our groups team and just reworking all that. So we're kind of doing this all day, coming out and talking briefly, but then we have a lot of fun in the evenings, because we just been hanging out and having fun in the evenings. So that's kind of our deal.
Hey, Ben, Aaron and I were kind of laughing before you jumped on the webinar, laughing with you at you. You're an extreme extrovert, one of the most extreme that I've ever been around. How are you coping with this?
Let's just qualify that. I'm normal and Greg's a hermit. So that's why I feel like, Greg is like, actually nothing has changed for Greg through this whole coronavirus. So he's slightly aware that he's further away from people and okay with that. How have I dealt with it? I think honestly, it is interesting, the things it brings up in you. Like you look longingly out the window at people walk by. And we found ourselves waving at people we didn't even know, like, hey, people, hey, humans. So I have a little bit of that. But, you know, in recent years, we've been paying more attention to the introvert side as a leader anyway. You know, in ministry, sometimes you just need to pull away and be by yourself and regroup a little. And I'm kind of glad I've been learning to do some of that, because I'm really leaning into that right now and really enjoying the forced Sabbath, the snow day thing. Like, this is good. I really am enjoying a little more reflection time. So it's good so far. You know, and the other side of that is I'm on Zoom all day, every day anyway. So it's not like I'm starving for personal attention.
Yeah, so let's jump right into our topic now, guys, and talk about how to keep the church on mission during challenging times. Now, we have churches of all sizes on this webinar. So we'll have churches, you know, of 100 and churches of 10,000. And so I want to make sure, you know, that we're covering general principles. But also, Aaron, talk a little bit about maybe what are some of the opportunities you're seeing at Traders in the city of Indianapolis? What are some of the things that you're jumping on right now to care for people or to be on mission?
Well, I think that first of all, as leaders, we really have to give some intentional thought to opportunity. And I know you used the word, Greg, and I know you used it in the best possible way, but opportunistic. And what we don't want to be is like exploiting this to say, wow, you know, look at us. I don't think any leader would want to do that intentionally, but I think if we even give the impression that that's what we're doing, it's just really fake and inauthentic. We want to step up and make a real difference and speak to people who are hurting right now. So I think for us as a church, we recognize that right now there's only one organization that can really deliver what people need right now, and that's the local church. There's a lot of content coming at people. There's a lot of bad news coming at people, and they're desperately looking for hope that's something real. And so I think as a church, we have to really make sure that we're giving that to them, that we're not just trying to throw out lots of content to get people's attention, especially, you know, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, which means I'm an achiever. And
Same as me, Aaron, same as me.
This is so hard for me because I just want to achieve right now. And how do I know if I'm achieving? And at the end of the day, when I look at my to-do list, what did I achieve? And it's very, very challenging for me just to slow down for a minute and say, it's not about what I can achieve. This is really like we are on a battlefield and we're sort of like the medics, you know, running around on the battlefield trying to help people. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to help them. We've got to give them hope. That hope's got to be based in the real challenges that we're facing. But we've got to be very clear. And I was just on 3 hours of Zoom calls with my team this morning, just trying to gain that clarity as a team to say, we've got to be clear about what our people can count on us to do for them. And we can't just be running around on the battlefield like crazy, every man for himself. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is we can offer people some stability and a voice of hope in a really confusing time right now.
Ben, you and I, we've been involved in email strings and text strings about kind of the pivot. Like, we're in the acute phase right now. I mean, we haven't even, you know, hit the peak yet. It'll happen sometime, you know, God willing, in the next couple of weeks. But the pivot we're talking about is moving from helping people deal with despair and discouragement to how do we actually care for people. Can you talk about that pivot a little bit?
Yeah. We're certainly, you know, that word pivot's maybe overused these days, but it's such a good word because it does describe, I think, what we're all feeling. We're all kind of having this instinct. I mean, I would almost say there was a third phase, Greg. The first one was where we were just all scrambling, trying to figure out, what are we going to do this weekend? What do we do? Can we meet? Should we meet? Should we not meet? You know, seems like a long time ago now, but that was the question. And pretty readily, we all figured out, whether we figured it out on our own or our governors told us we weren't going to meet, we eventually had to figure out how to get the weekend thing kind of happening online. And that became something that took a lot of energy. And the positives in that was, I think it pulled, like whenever there's a crisis, it's an opportunity. It creates urgency. So you mentioned how churches sometimes, they have a hard time adapting or changing, and now this makes it even harder. But the other side of that is it makes it easier because there's a bona fide shared crisis and everyone's all hands on deck. And that first phase was figuring out how do we get the weekend happening. I think the pivot that we're all sensing is, okay, we've figured out now we've got to move from, okay, how do we help our people just to wash their hands and have the weekend online? How do we move now to washing feet? How do we move now to being the church, as Aaron was saying? And I think people are ready for that shift and sensing that this is a lot more important than just figuring out how to get our information out or having, the church online. And I think the challenge is a little bit trickier because the other can kind of be content driven, and it's harder to know how to serve in a content way only. We're kind of focusing on, well, first thing I would just say, Greg, too, though, is I wouldn't want to overlook for any of the listeners here, just how important the function of our own leadership is and the kind of, I guess, leaders are kind of made for moments like these. And Henry Blackaby, I think, is the one who said, why do we need leaders? Because there are problems. There's something that needs to happen. And there's certain kind of people that definitely are going to kind of look the other way and say, well, someone should do something about that. But a leader is one who says, a Christian leader would be one who says, God's equipped and called us to step in. This is a need that needs to be met. So that's what leadership is in this moment, is identifying legit needs, not just, as Aaron said, frantically running about trying to do something for crying out loud, but listening and looking like Jesus did with eyes that sees the crowd and has compassion, and then steps into that with the power and that we've been given through the gospel. So we're kind of focusing on three things in that moment. Kind of talking about connection, communication, and content. That was the first, that's the stuff that I think is, so connection basically among people. Like, how can we help our people be in touch with each other? They don't all need help doing that. They can figure some of that out on their own. But again, there's some centralized ways that are really important. I think we're going to break down and talk about some of those specific examples, but helping people connect with each other is super important right now. They're just hungry for it. And the second is communication from leaders. And that's all the stuff Aaron was mentioning, like this non-anxious presence, like let's help them see with as much clarity as we know right now, which often isn't very much clarity and it isn't very far down the road, but it's saying for the next few weeks, this is what we're doing and what you can think about and the kinds of stuff we're going to do. And then the last one is that content is king. I mean, we really do broker hope. We do have something important to say. All the stuff we always preach about hope and love and peace and contentedness in all circumstances, and how we deal with suffering and who we think God really is. All of that is content that I think, without feeling like we've just got to fill every second of social media, I do think people are really hungry for that. They're hearing the same messages we've always said with different ears now, because it finally matters to them in a way that God is already using. So connection, helping people connect with other people, helping communicate from the leadership about as much as we know at any given time. And then content is king. Don't worry about production value. Just, you as a minister giving a 2-minute heartfelt encouragement is what people are eating up, and I think is an important thing. So that's kind of the setup, I think, for then, all right, let's talk about all the ways we can serve and do that last pivot, which is, how do we show up now and serve? We figured out how to do weekends when we couldn't meet. Now we're figuring out how to serve when we can't leave our homes. And I think there's a lot of beautiful creativity happening, just like we saw with figuring out how to do a weekend online. Man, I'll tell you, there's some beautiful stuff. I'd love to share some of the stuff we're doing. I want to hear what Aaron's doing, and we got lots of guys and gals on this line that are doing some cool stuff. We need to start.
Okay, let's shift to that now, Ben. Aaron, we got a great question in from Charlie. What's the best way to make an impact right now with our church if we're trying to be conscious of budget, but also our greatest resource, our people? cannot be around, others to serve them. So what are some of those things that we can encourage our people to do right now in the act of serving others?
Well, I mean, I think that for us, like in our area, like we're trying to figure out what the needs are, and the needs are physical, emotional, spiritual. And so, what can we do to meet physical needs? And I think right now, physical would be food. For us right now, it's to as much as we can help, it's medical supplies for medical workers, which we're trying to do everything we can to help in that regard. um, and I also think that the families of medical workers, I was just on a phone call this morning, like and we live in a highly medical community. Can we come around, identify all the families of our doctors and nurses and anybody on the medical field, any first responders? Can we reach out to the families, because many of them can't see their husband or wife or whoever's working, because they're coming home and quarantining themselves at risk of not infecting their family. So how can we minister to the family in a real tangible need, whether that's food, cards, call and praying over them, et cetera. Our benevolence ministry, we're trying to bolster that up, knowing that needs are going to come. So I think that there's identifying what those physical needs are, then identifying emotional needs, which right now are through the roof: loneliness, anxiety, worry, stress. People are just desperately looking for a word of hope. And then the spiritual. I think we've got to mobilize our teams and our churches around what it is that we can do. And I think right now I can get so overwhelmed. Everybody keeps saying, hey, when do you think this is going to lift? And when can we get back together and all that? I think there's really only 3 days that need to be on our leaders' radar: yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So what happened yesterday that informs what we do today? What do we do today that's going to impact what we do tomorrow? And then that's all I can really control. And setting a course of a plan. I was on a call this morning with our team, and we're making some decisions. And they said, well, what about after we come through this? And I said, that's a jillion years away. It's like, this is for now. For now, this is what we do, and this is how we meet needs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, Greg. And I think there is going to be, we all know there's going to be cool stuff on the other side of this. There is another side of it. It's okay to let people know that, and that there'll be things we invent now that will probably have lasting impact, and some that'll drift away, but that's the least of our concerns right now. I just love what Aaron said there about just let's be, in the moment and paying attention. We've called our local, hospitals, schools, and they have had some things for us to do. That people can do from their homes. Some of it is around food insecurity in schools. A lot of concern about those kids, that are eating lunches at school that aren't doing that anymore. Hospital. Here's something that's kind of down and dirty, just in the weeds here, Greg, but maybe a practical idea. We happen to have a lot of healthcare workers. I think every church probably does, and so we do this thing called a morning show. It's just a Facebook Live thing at 8 a.m. every morning. And we just, we try to have some fun. We read some scripture where someone plays a guitar on a different pre-recorded thing. And, but in that, we just said a couple days ago, hey, if you've got a picture of a healthcare worker, we just so appreciate these people right now. They're heroes to us, nurses, doctors, EMTs, anyone. It's hard right now, and they need our encouragement. And you've seen maybe where people are driving and honking at hospitals and so forth. But we just said, just send in two things. Send in a picture of a healthcare worker that you know or love, and then send in a 2-second video of yourself applauding and cheering and go crazy. Maybe be creative with it. We're going to show like a 7-minute video on Friday morning. It's already, people are so moved. And I'll tell you, it just moves you so deeply, because people want to do something. And we can't go hug them. We can't do anything, but we can at least do that. And it's very moving. And I think those kinds of things are using social media, using, those kind of mechanisms are really important and encouraging right now. And I think that the thing we're trying to do is another pivot, Greg, is we were originally thinking, okay, mobilize our staff. How can we serve everybody? We're really shifting. Wait, let's not lose our heads. Let's go back to what we do best, which is staff. Our job is to mobilize other people to serve. The people sitting at home are the ones who who are looking for some way. How can I help? And so we're kind of giving 2 messages. One, go be on mission. You look for your neighbors and do what you need to do. If you have an elderly neighbor, call them. But at the same time, people do look to and are expecting your church to kind of help broker and warehouse some of that stuff. So yes, tell your people, go do it on your own. You don't need us to tell you what to do. But on the other hand, we are going to try to sort of centralize some of these things. And I think that's really important that we not be afraid to try to do that a little bit. And so some of the centralized things that we can do are, for example, Aaron mentioned benevolence. And, you know, if you don't have a benevolence fund, you should probably start one, because some people are going to say, I have right now, and I want to be able to help someone, but I don't know who to help. I don't have any neighbor. Can you, you know, and that's what they did in the book of Acts. They brought it to the apostles' feet. They sold their field, brought it to the apostles' feet. And the next thing you know, there wasn't anybody among them that had a need. So the apostles are going to have, you're going to have some sort of organizational system to sort of say, what are the needs and how can we help match them? And we didn't have that ministry like that before, but we're trying to figure it out right now.
Yeah, I think there are, you know, so I know we can't, because we just don't know what the future holds, but we know it'll never be the same again. And so one of the things we're trying to do at Stadia, and I would really challenge all of you church leaders, is to say, what can we do right now in a creative way that we, like Ben, that video, the 7-minute video, I mean, that's something we should be doing year round, right? I mean, just as a normative thing, I'm going, that's a great idea. Why did, you know, but that's something we can do now that's going to have benefit down the road as well. And so there are certain organizations and churches that are going to come out of this flying and thriving in ways they never did before. And I think it's because they're saying, how can we be creative and innovate now in ways, especially in the digital space, to care for people that will have long-term benefits. I'm scheduling right now with lots of Stadia's partners. It's Coffee with Greg, and it's just I'm setting up 15-minute Zoom calls. And Aaron, it might be with Aaron Brockett to just go, Aaron, I just want to have a cup of coffee with you and hear how you're doing. I'm not calling Aaron to ask for money. I'm not calling to Aaron to ask, you know, I genuinely care about Aaron. And guess what? I actually have the time right now locked in my house to jump on a Zoom call with Aaron and have a cup of coffee. Well, quite frankly, that's something I should be doing year round, you know? So as senior pastors, as church leaders, man, those Zoom calls you can set up with people in your church, your some of your leaders, people you haven't connected with in the last 6 months, and you can actually do it now. And it just has to be a cup of coffee for 15 minutes, or children's workers, you know, leaders connecting with their staff. And I don't even mean not paid staff, just your volunteers who are in those classrooms and having coffee with them and letting them know that they care. Guys, here's a good question. How are you restructuring your staff and giving them a new job description so they know clearly what they're supposed to do right now?
Hey, Greg, before we move on, I just wanted to piggyback on what you said before, if I can, before you pivot to that new question.
Yeah.
Because what you just said about, man, we should have been probably doing this all along was exactly the words that were said in one of our staff meeting this morning. Simple thing that we're trying to do that every church can do is just phone call every single person in your membership name rosters. And we have a simple little, you know, kind of a script sort of thing to kind of guide it. But it's basically, hey, we're just checking in on everybody. How are you doing? How can we pray for you? Are you going crazy? Anything you need? And it's amazing the pastoral conversations coming out of that. We started with a goal of saying we need to kind of get through this list and call everybody. What we've done is we've done another shift here to say, wait, that's important. And a lot of good things are happening there. What's even more important is to involve as many people as possible in making those calls. Yeah. So we started out thinking, okay, here's 10 people. Can you each make 100 calls? We're thinking, no. Let's use 100 people. Can you each make 10 calls? And the staff are kind of working with those people. I'm saying that kind of thing because people are so thrilled to be able to be useful, especially in this time. But that was the comment that came back, was exactly what you said. It's like there's something really powerful here. Our church is more connected than we've ever been. People are getting phone calls from the big church saying, how can we pray for you right now? What's going on in your family? Anything you want to talk about, which is something that we've kind of been trying to figure out how to do. It's as simple as picking up the phone. So it's not even high tech, you know, so, and the other thing is that you were mentioning, the other thing that's been invented out of necessity is just the connection through groups. And I think we all are hungering for in-person physical gatherings, but at the same time, we're like, we see great possibilities now that we never knew existed before. And our leader follow-up with their members of their groups through Zoom, it's off the charts. It's the best pastoral care we've ever done. But so I'm mentioning those things because I think every church can do those things. And I love what you were saying about all that. And I wanted to follow up on that.
Well, okay. So before we shift to that, other the staffing question, you know, because so we're in the acute phase, but we know that in the United States now, all the numbers are forecast right now that there's going to be somewhere between 100,000 and 240,000. We don't know for sure, actual deaths. And so there are going to be people, I don't know if you all have, you know, people in your church yet that have been diagnosed with COVID-19, or if you have friends or people close to you, you know, and how are we going to, you know, it's thinking through right now, how are we going to care for those families? You know, Ben, I was sharing with you this morning, you know, my 80-year-old mom was taken into the hospital yesterday afternoon by ambulance, and the doctors believe she has COVID-19. We're supposed to, I'm supposed to get a call from the hospital here any minute to find out. So if I have to jump off this, Ben, you'll take over. But here, it's the strangest thing because I can't go to the hospital. My dad is going nuts right now because he can't go to the hospital. So my mom's in this hospital in bad shape, waiting to find out if she has COVID-19 and what to do. And you know, so guys, talk a little bit about that. I would love your prayers, everyone, for my mom, Marjorie. So I'll do that selfishly right now. But we've got to be thinking about that. How are we going to give pastoral care in a time when we can't even be with people?
Yeah.
Either of you want to speak into that?
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, well, there is no easy answer on that. I think it's one reason we need to be the Aaron and Hur holding up the arms of healthcare workers. We're all churches that have been trying to teach our people for years, hey, whoever you are, if you're a Christ follower, you're a missionary. Well, right now you can't get into the hospital, but you've already got members who are allowed in that hospital. And the thing they need to bring is not only their professionalism and their education, but the presence of Christ. And so I think it's supporting healthcare people to be on mission in that way. I think really helping them see, you know, that pivot, that what you're doing is legitimate ministry. When you're caring for people and gowning up and being so careful, it's a ministry that we all wish we could do right now for Greg's mom, but we can't. But you can. Thank you for being there. It's valid and it's real. So I think paying attention to that to healthcare workers is more than a nice thing. I think it's a very strategic and one of the only things we can do. So that's one thing. I think this general shift is something American Christianity is not probably very prepared for, because I mean, even when this thing happened, we're all like, okay, let's help our people not get sick. Well, it turns out the way the church historically has dealt with this is they cared for the sick. They went to the sick and they got sick themselves in order to, you know, we all know the history of the plagues there and how it was our finest moment in earlier centuries, where it was the Christians that distinguished themselves as the ones who, when everyone was running for the hills, you know, they kind of stayed in there and took people into their homes. And I don't know at what point we start talking that way but I think we've all admired missionaries from abroad who live in highly persecutorial places where they're being threatened for preaching the gospel. And we say, oh man, I just admire their faith so much because they're really risking something and it's costing them something. So I think the sense of realness of that kind of faith is finally being visited upon the American church in a sense that it's like, I'm not saying we should ever do anything unhealthy, you know, with not observing distances and run into hospitals and care for people. I just mean, it suddenly got real about whether we believe it's to live as Christ and die as gain. So I think it's cast it in those terms where it's like, this is a matter of life and death. And we believe what we preach about all of that, and the hope in Jesus' name. And let's help those who are on the front lines, even when we can't be.
Aaron, we're talking about, keeping the church on mission, which we would all agree it's difficult in easier times. What are you doing with your staff right now? And, you have a large staff. We have church, here that, the senior pastor is the only staff. But what I would say to that person, to you, church planter or, smaller church, your role is so important, but it's with volunteer leaders. And so, Aaron, what are you doing with your staff right now to shift roles, to help them clarify what they should be doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that one of the jobs of a leader is to frame reality and to really help people redefine the landscape of kind of what we're looking at. So I think instead of, like, I was real nervous whenever there was all the talk about, well, I think that we'll be back by Easter. I was real cautious of that kind of talk even at the time, because it's, regardless of president or politics, it's because I just thought, I think that what we really need to do is we need to overshoot it by a ways. I even think now, like, people saying, well, the shelter in place stuff is going to go till April 30th, and then we'll all get there all clear, and then we're just going to have this amazing worship service the first Sunday in May. And I just don't know about that. I think that even if we do get the shelter in place lifted, I don't think that automatically means we're back to church as usual the Sunday after. And so I think I just even started to kind of reframe it for our staff yesterday, just to say, hey, right now, I think I just need you to think that we physically won't be able to gather again until the 1st of June. And I hope I'm wrong about that. And if I am, hopefully that'll be a nice little morale boost. But I think we just got to get oriented to the fact that, hey, guys, we're not just hunkering down for 3 or 4 weeks of church online. Things have fundamentally changed even beyond this. And so we need you to start thinking of the church isn't a physical place that you actually go to, but church is everywhere. It's going to be more digital moving forward. And so your job has got to be adjusted around that, both in times of crisis and when we get off this battlefield moving forward. And so I think that our teams and all of our department leaders are then having those conversations to say, okay, here you've got to, you're not just doing what you used to do a month ago at home. You're actually fundamentally changing the perspective of what you do and how that gets done. And this is really, really painful. And yet at the same time, we are reaching more people than our church ever has before. And so I think God's doing something pretty significant here. And I think that we've got to help people in their pain, but also help people be able to see clearly the really transformational things that God wants to do in and through this.
Okay, really practical though, Aaron, I'm going to press you on this because what you're saying is so important that I want to draw everything out. You're talking to your staff saying what you used to do isn't what you have to do today. What does some of that transition in that job description or expectation, be they volunteers or paid staff, what does that look like in real time?
Well, I mean, just to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know that we've got it all figured out. I mean, I think that we're sorting our way through it. I mean, I think that it largely means what will we do as a church on a weekly basis for the foreseeable future. And so we know we're still going to do a weekend gathering. We know that we're going to do a midweek gathering. We know that we're going to try to provide some touch and some care for people. And so I think that's where we've got to get every single department centered around what are the 5 or 6 things our church is really focused on delivering every single week. And it's all hands on deck towards those efforts. And the last thing that I want is somebody just to go, well, I'm at home right now, so I guess I'll just keep writing curriculum like I used to, or I guess I'll keep, whatever. I mean, it's just like, you can't do that. They've got to have some clear orders to say, hey, as a church, I know that a month ago, this was what we used to be doing, but now here's our focus as a church. Now every department has to support this.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So, I think there are 3 things that I think we really need to be going after as churches right now. I think we need to, relationships. We've all been talking about that. I think that's probably number 1 priority, actually, is how do we get people connected? How do we stay connected with them? Give them that message of hope. lift them out of depression, because loss causes depression, and we've lost relationships and relational touch. So people are dealing with depression and anxiety. So you have the relationships. But then I think also with our staffs, especially, and volunteers, it is that daily ministry. What does that look like? And just crystal clear, how much clarity can we give on what does daily ministry look like, right? And so here's our top priorities this week on what we have to get done. So if it's getting your weekend gathering streamed, or if it's asking your children's person to have, 2 or 3 Zoom calls where children and parents can jump on, whatever that looks like for you in your context, but really clarifying, because our staff and volunteers need clarity and they need direction, because that's what leaders do during those times. And then the third thing I really think is creativity and innovation, and asking ourselves, spending time, because we have that time now, to say, how can we innovate? And getting your team, be they volunteers or staff, in a Zoom call and saying, hey, how can we do this better? We know people are going to be coming up. They're going to have loved ones in the hospital. How can we care for them in a really creative way? And during those times. Ben, speak to us. Talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing with your staff and along those lines.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is kind of in that hierarchy of things as you think about mission and vision and strategy, right? So mission is the big thing up top. Well, that really hasn't changed for any of our churches. Vision is now like suspect. And if you had a 5-year vision, it just became a 5-week vision at the most. So it's shortened and rethought a little bit, but the strategy completely out the window. And I think it's helpful to think in those terms, like, wait, who we are and what we're all about has not changed. And the vision, while we'll get back to long-term vision, right now we're pretty clear on what we want to do over the next few weeks, but let's rethink. We have a completely new assignment on how it's delivered and strategies, and all hands on deck, and it's a shuffling of the deck. You might get reassigned to a new area, you might get redeployed, you might get, we're redoing everything. So we put something together for every major thing we do, like whether it's Easter or whatever, called a playbook. And so we put together that. I just gave you the link of that in the chat if it's helpful. I haven't looked at it in a while. I'm not sure all it's there, but it's got a lot of stuff that we just kind of use internally that you're welcome to have access to. But that kind of outlines, we just reorganized around the very things you were saying, like, what do we need to do right now? And boy, seems like we need a team that can do this. Let's get a team. And some of those teams are already there. So we have a groups team, and we want groups to be online. So they're on that, obviously. And we have a team that was already devoted to the weekend. So they're on that. But like, what about welcome people? And what about kids ministry? Exactly. How does all that work? So there's been a redeployment of some people that way, which I think has been helpful. Frankly, we have some people, we're not sure, if you were primarily involved in the building or, some things like that. It's not clear yet where this is going and how you're going to be redeployed or fit in, but we're trying to help some staff rest because they're working their buns off and they haven't had a break. So we're trying to say to some of our team, hey, take care of yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first, make sure you're resting and taking a Sabbath. What help do you need? We're trying to say to some other staff, how can we redeploy you and get you, taking care, helping in another area where someone else is dying in a pile. And all of us, we're trying to just say, stay close, to Jesus, take your Sabbath and take care of yourself. And let's be kind to each other and get through this strange period. So those are some of the immediate things I guess we're thinking about. I can't remember exactly what your question was.
That's okay, Ben. I just want to say, I just opened your that link you put on there. Hey, everybody, make sure you copy that link and take a look at that. That is their playbook. That is fantastic stuff. So Ben, thanks so much for sharing it. And, I love what you just said about redeploying some staff. If you have certain volunteers or certain staff that are, so like at Stadia, we have a global staff that, helps plant churches globally. Well, we're not taking a whole lot of global trips right now, zero. And quite frankly, we're looking at, there's a good chance we won't be taking any global trips this year, period. And so we have asked those staff to help in other areas on our team where we need help during this crucial time. And I think you can look at some volunteer areas maybe in your church or staff areas and say, hey, do you mind helping over here? Because man, this one's getting crunched. Hey guys, I want to talk. Aaron, you talked quite a bit about, kind of the food aspect, the benevolence. Can you get real practical? I mean, like I'm sitting here and I'm going, wow, I don't even know what to do with that. Like, do you have people stopping by the church building, or how are you helping in that way?
Well, I think that, one of the initial challenges, there's maybe two, that the food banks initially were kind of saying, hey, we're completely full. We can't take any more food. And then the other item was, how do we help people stay safe as they're delivering those items? And I think now we're beginning to hear, like I just heard one of our local food banks just got slammed yesterday. Like they went from they served 300 meals yesterday or 2 days ago, and they went up to 3,000 meals in a day. And so I think immediately we're thinking, how do we help resource them? And so I think that we're trying to figure out how to do safe drops, maybe time zones where people can come to the church. They just drop it off on the sidewalks and people come out and they collect it. But some plans are being formulated around that, because we do know that that's going to be an ongoing need for a while.
Ben, how are you guys delivering?
Well, in our case, we had a pretty significant food drop already in place with connections to all the local pantries and all of that. And we have some sources from restaurants and grocery stores. So we had our first drive-by delivery yesterday, and it was, as you can imagine, larger than any other food drop we've had, but it was just drive-by. So people didn't get out of their cars, and all the workers were gloved and masked, and all the stuff was packaged up. Nothing was open, and they popped their trunks and we dropped it in their trunks. So, I mean, there's that. There is the schools are the ones that I think are worth checking with. The schools, if you have some schools that have a number of kids on free or reduced, or, with lunch needs, I would be checking that locally, and they'll have very specific ideas and requirements usually about how those needs can be met. So I think there are some real good options that way for food. I think a lot of local hospitals are kind of in a frontline wartime mentality where they don't have adequate masks, and that's worth checking, because you can either perhaps buy masks for them or put people to work making them, and they are accepting in many places handmade masks, which are urgent because they only have so much usefulness and they've got to be disposed of. So those are a couple of things like that, along with practical needs that you were mentioning.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Hey, we have a great question here about how are you helping staff find new boundaries, young staff who may not feel empowered to ask how they can find rest and care. One of the things that was kind of surprising to me, shouldn't have been my naivete, was we had an all-staff Zoom call last week, and we invited one of our pastor partners to just do a 15-minute devotional at the front end, just to encourage our staff. Man, I had staff in tears. I underestimated the toll this is taking on our staff. So, we're out. It's our job as leaders to care for the people in our church, to care for our partners and so forth. And we have to make sure that our staff is being cared for as well. And here's the deal, friends. The beautiful thing about it, this is a guy who is a high impact leader, out in California, but because of Zoom, he came on. We didn't have to pay him anything. He did this amazing devotional for 15 minutes and blessed our socks off. You know what? We as leaders, we're willing to do that. And so take advantage of that. Get 20 of your volunteers from children's ministry together on a Zoom call and contact someone and say, would you do a 10 to 15 minute devotional just to uplift these volunteers right now? And people were willing to do that. So, take advantage of that kind of stuff. And then I'd say, make sure you're taking care of yourself, because, I think we don't realize the toll it's taking on us as well. That the areas of margin that we used to have in our life, if you had some, are actually being burned up now by the coronavirus. And so it's almost like you're starting at a deficit each day, and you have to refill your personal tank even more. Get a little bit more sleep, spend more time in prayer, spend more time in reading the Bible, whatever it is that's your spiritual, kind of fills your tank. Yeah. Aaron, what are you doing to kind of just personally keep yourself healthy so that you can keep the church on mission?
Yeah, it's something you have to fight for. I think that we've got so much coming at us all the time, and things are developing so much that it is something you're literally going to have to fight for. I was on a Zoom call with a leader yesterday because we're trying to get masks out to medical workers. He made the comment to me. He goes, "Man, who has time for sleep? Who's sleeping? I'm not." And I was just like, whoa, 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 like, hold up. Now, this isn't anybody on our staff. This is just somebody we're working with. And I'm just like, man, bro, you've got to sleep. You want to wear down your immune system right away, then, you're going to really make yourself vulnerable. So I think for us, like, this was probably about a week and a half ago where, my wife and I just sat down on a Sunday afternoon and we said, okay, if we're going to be operating out of our home with our kids here at home, doing school, and we're trying to do ministry, we've got to have a schedule that we maintain more than anything. Because I'll be honest with you, the first week I didn't do it well. The first week it was like a tsunami hit and my feet were flipping over my head, and I was sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in right now. I'm in my bedroom, had CNN on with my laptop in front of me, desperately looking for good news, which never came. And I realized I did that all week long and I lost all my routine. And I think that it's really important for you to really be disciplined and say, this is when I'm going to get up. This is when I'm going to have coffee. This is when I'm going to read my Bible. This is when I'm going to jump on a Zoom call. Then I'm shutting all that off. And this is what I'm going to focus on next. Because if you don't eat healthy, if you don't sleep, and if you don't get exercise, you're going to wear yourself down, not just physically, which may make you immune or make you vulnerable to a virus, but you're not going to be emotionally and spiritually in a place where you can lead anyone or anything.
Man, that exercise piece is so important, Aaron. And here in Ohio in the winter, it's difficult to exercise without going to the gym. And so now, we don't have that opportunity. But for Christmas this year, I bought Julie, my wife, an exercise bike. It was for her. But no joke, in the last 20 days, I have not missed a day being on that exercise bike. It's kind of been a lifeline for me because it keeps me healthy. It gets the endorphins to my brain, helps me deal with adrenaline in a healthy way. So, you don't have to have an exercise bike, but it can be doing push-ups or sit-ups, or you can still go outside for a walk, whatever it is. There's all kinds of reasons that we need that. Ben, talk a little bit about how your own self-care right now.
Yeah, I really resonated with what Aaron was saying. Week one, I wasn't probably doing a very good job of taking care of myself. It was just sort of like in this heightened adrenaline rush. As we all know, it was hour by hour and trying to figure out how to get our arms around this. So, and I realized cooped up in my house, we actually had a couple rainy days in there, so I wasn't even outside doing anything. And just my body just was aching in every way and just horrible. So I've had to schedule, like, get your butt up out of the chair, go for a walk. And we have gone for walks as a family on our road, which we can do. And I really enjoy that. I play a lot of tennis, like sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. Going crazy with that right now. We're not doing that. So, I'm trying to find other ways. Most of the rest of the family is running or using the treadmill stuff. But I think also just, I think being really careful, kind of what Aaron was saying, being careful about how much you take in, because there's no end to what's coming through your phone, the news, and being careful about, and what kind, and make sure you're getting enough headlines out of the Bible, as opposed to just whatever the latest headline is coming from Twitter or CNN or what have you. And I think that there's only so much we're meant to really absorb. So we already know all the most important stuff of this. And if you think big happens, you're going to hear about it. I would say focus on your relationship with the Lord more than ever. And I think this is a great opportunity to do that. I'm just starting to sense a new rhythm here where I've got more space to do that. And it's really, really good. So I would just encourage everybody to pay attention to the physical stuff, Don't be afraid to get quiet. Turn off the news. Don't try to stay abreast of everything. You know, there's a thing in Numbers, maybe you guys heard this, in Numbers chapter 16, it's Moses and Aaron, and they're out with the children of Israel in the wilderness. And there's a plague, and it's sweeping through, and it's killing off the children of Israel. And they're interpreting it like God is doing this to us. And it looks, you know, the writer seems to think that's what's going on. And Moses says to Aaron, take your censer and put an incense in it, and along with the fire from the altar, and hurry to the assembly and make atonement for them. Wrath is coming from the Lord, and the plague is starting, and it's starting to kill all the people. But here's what Aaron and Moses did. They ran into the midst of the assembly. The plague had already started among the people, but Aaron offered the incense and made atonement for them. In verse 48 of Numbers 16, he says, he stood between the living and the dead, and the plague stopped. And it's almost like, and the verse before that says they fell down on their faces before God. So it's almost, I don't know how to translate all that physically in terms of a plague. I do know spiritually, that's what we're trying to tell our staff is look, our job is to fall down on our faces before God, and we'll do the running and stand between them and what Satan wants to do in their mind and their heart and spiritually speaking with this plague. And make it, you know, we can't make atonement for them, but we can stand between them and what this, people just need the tools and the resources and the pastoral guidance right now. Don't be afraid to help them see just the beautiful, powerful truth that we have. I'll tell you, if there are preachers on here, they want to use this right here. John 20 is something that's so powerful. We're coming up on Easter. Beautiful Easter passage, right? All the disciples they're living as if Jesus is dead. He's already alive. He's back in the world, but they're hiding where? Behind closed doors, holed up in their houses as if on quarantine. And Jesus appears in their midst, shows up there, and his message is very clear. Peace. I bring you my peace. I bring you my peace. Your people need that message, you know, just like let Jesus into your home. You've stocked up on toilet paper and everything else. The thing you need most is Jesus. Invite him into your home. He's going to bring the same thing to you. He's alive. He's not dead. Bring peace. And the next part of that is he gives them peace, not just so they feel better. The next thing he says is, now I'm sending you. And there's some way, as you as a peace-filled, Jesus-centered person who lives in the light of the resurrection, there's something that God wants you to be able to do for someone else in this. And the sooner we help our people get sent with resurrection power, the better off they're going to be. So that's something that I think, just help your people. Yes, go for walks and all that, but don't be afraid to preach the good news to them of a risen Jesus. Easter is
Ben,
well-timed.
I love that, because I think about half of us on this call now just got our Easter message from you. So I'm writing that stuff down. I'm going, that's great. Hey, here's another thing that I would encourage you to do. You know, people do have more time to pray. And I think, but you know, for me, it's like, okay, for me to have more time to pray, that means I'm going to go from, 10 minutes in the morning to 20 minutes now, because I find it really difficult to pray for an hour straight. That's just not the way I'm wired. I typically pray throughout the day, but it really does help me if I know what to pray. And so I think us maybe even sending out, here's a prayer guideline to our people, maybe every other day, and just saying, hey, as you're praying here, I want you to, here's some praise things from our church that we can praise God for. Here are some things that we really need prayer for, if you wouldn't mind joining us in prayer. I mean, like right now, I'm thinking about the church in India, and, we're planting hundreds of churches in India every year now. And I'll tell you what, India is going to get slammed by this in a way that we can't even fathom. And so, we're asking our partners now, would you please pray for our church planters in India? And, that gives you specific things. And so being able to send out even specific prayer requests, again, in children's ministry, in your worship ministry, asking people, because we do have extra time to pray. Hey, Aaron, as we kind of wrap up here, got a great question. You're leading a larger church in Indianapolis. Are there any ways for medium or small churches to kind of partner with you guys, maybe in the benevolence areas or in ways to serve?
And is there a little bit more to that question? And is there
well, it's not even specifically in Indianapolis, but are there ways we can partner together? Yeah. Maybe a really small church that doesn't have as many resources, but they do have people in their church are the ways that, you know, I'm just thinking creatively here right now too.
Well, I think that now more than ever, like it's really important for pastors in churches, regardless of church size, in your local community to touch base. And so it was about a week ago. I just reached out to all the pastors in Indy that I had personal numbers for, and just said, "Hey guys, I've been on Zoom calls with pastors all over the world, but I haven't talked to you yet, and I'm feeling kind of bad about that. And so, can we do a Zoom call tomorrow?" Every single one of them was like, "Yep, yep, 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 yep." We all got on the Zoom call. We just kind of went around the horn saying, "Hey, tell us how you're doing. How's your family? How's your church?" And then out of that sprung up an opportunity for us to work with a local organization who's purchasing an N95 type medical mask from China. And we actually just let them all know about it. All the churches were like, "Hey, can we get in on that?" And I think some of the smaller churches were like, "Hey, we'll buy 500 masks." Some of the bigger churches were like, "We'll do 25,000 masks." And so everybody was able to chip in on a project regardless of church size. So I would just recommend, if you haven't done it already, just to reach out to the local pastors in your area, whether you're a big church or a small church, and just say, "Hey guys, could we have a Zoom call and talk and put our heads together, because the Big C church really needs to be unified right now."
Yeah, so I would encourage you, if you're a pastor of a larger church, reach out to those pastors in your community that are pastoring smaller churches, ask how they're doing. But if you're a smaller church, reach out to the larger church and say, "Is there anything that you need help with, or that you've got to, you know, like those masks, because that became available to you, that we can help you serve together." That's just genius, you know, kind of coming together and serving that way. Okay, we're going to need to wrap up now. I'm so grateful to my friend Aaron Brockett and to Ben Kacharis. Next Tuesday, we have our next webinar. It's about preaching on Easter and some specific things. We have I'm excited about our two guests, Albert Tate, who's one of the funniest communicators on the planet and most insightful, is going to be joining with us. If you don't want to miss that one. And also a young guy named Josh Amstutz, who's just crushing it up in Milwaukee right now, and church plant, and but not as big as Albert Bell at this point, but man, great communicator. They're going to be talking about how to communicate in kind of some nuanced and creative ways at Easter. So God bless you all, and we'll look forward to talking with you next week.
Thanks,
all right,
guys.
thank you.